Greetings, greetings, greetings. You are now tuned into the vault. Trust Christian, own nothing, control everything. Thank you for tuning in live or listening to replay. Always appreciate everybody that tunes live or listen to replay. Definitely excited to do an episode today. So, welcome to the vault. This is episode 214. I have a trust versus I am a trustee. This is a long awaited topic because this is going to once again go towards what is public versus private. And literally, I have a trust versus I am a trustee is public versus private. It is the antithesis of public versus private. And so, really excited about doing this episode. A lot of people find a lot of value, a lot of content. We just want to thank everybody for listening. Wherever you are in the world, we do value our trustees and everybody that even just listens, looking to get their positioning to position themselves in a greater position. So thank everybody for tuning in live. Uh, we're just going to go ahead and get started on this episode because we've gotten this question in consultations for years. Some people even ask it live, but even after previous episodes where people profusely use the term of ownership, which incurs liability, it's rather important for us to do this and point out and contrast what is it that you're experiencing when you say I have a trust versus I am a trustee. So let's just go ahead and get into it. Um, this episode is catered towards people that are saying, okay, what is the difference between public and private? Ladies and gentlemen, the difference between public and private is exactly this. This is where, people are consulting their lawyers. Their lawyers are, giving them not necessarily half truths, but not giving them the complete rundown of the difference between public and private. Why? Because the public side has obligations. If the lawyers are bar lawyers, if the lawyer is a state lawyer, don't they only set up state trusts? Ladies and gentlemen, if you're in a particular state, don't they have state sanctioned entities? Just like a state LLC, just like a state corporation, don't the lawyers set those things up? And then you end up saying, I have a corporation or I have a LLC. So what happens to the people on the private side? What do they say? They say it simply, I'm a trustee, ladies and gentlemen. When you all look into private business or private charity, you're only one thing. You're a trustee. You let go of ownership and you have control now. Control over assets, a position of power. So this is a very interesting way to move because even trustees that have not corrected their speech yet, they say, oh, I have a trust. Ladies and gentlemen, that means you have a living trust. A living trust is something that you created. When you state ownership, you state liability. Who's liable for this entity? Who created this entity? Trustees don't do that. The trustees that come to trustee training, they just assume the position of trustee over their family's estate. Now, how do you have a trust? If you're assuming a position of trustee over your family's estate, it's called the trust and estate tax form. But are we filing it as a trustee? Or are we filing it as the grantor of the trust? Are we filing it as the trustee? Or are we filing as the grantor and a trustee? So many people come to the vault. We ask them, well, who created the trust? I did. And then they say, oh, well, but I'm still a trustee. So you look like you have a trust. It smells like you have a trust, which you do. Why? Because you didn't give up true ownership, even though you think you did, and you didn't give up control. You can't have both at the same time when you are a trustee. Why? Because when you're a trustee, it's own nothing, control everything. You don't own it. That's the difference between public and private. You can't own it. You can't have it. You have to let it go. So this is why so many people come back to the vault via consultation. They say, oh, we talked to our lawyer. And our lawyer said that we wouldn't want to give up and divest ourselves of all of our assets because then that means we'll never be able to get it back. Why? Because on the public side, isn't that what the lawyers have to be able to hold over your head in will and probate? When you have to deal with a will, you have to deal with a what? A probate attorney. So you have a will. Are you a trustee over the will? No, you're dead. See, that's the difference between a trust and a will. Trust don't die. Wills are a last written document. What's the purpose of a will when all the assets that you ever accumulated throughout your life were in the family trust that were given to the next generation in a proper position? And all you were the whole time was a trustee. But when people are focused on their first name and not their last name, they have a trust. They want to change their name. They don't want to go by the family name for generations. The things that gives you your inheritance, the family name, they want to focus on their first name. I have a trust implies ownership. We've said this many times. You cannot say it enough. Why? Because the correction in speech allows people not to address you as the owner. The bank, when you are a trustee, you're a trustee. They don't address you as the owner. The bank doesn't, if you're a trustee. But people will still walk around and say, I have a trust. My trust. How do you address it, ladies and gentlemen? This is the conundrum that people ask. Well, how do I address it? The trust. Because the trust is independent of the trustee. The trustee is just what? A trustee. They're not the owner. They're not the beneficiary. So then it encourages the individual to make sure that they know what their position is. It's not a position of having. It's a position of servanthood. It's a position of trusteeship. It's a position of stewardship. Not a position of, I have a trust. Because I have a trust is living. See, ladies and gentlemen, this is the disadvantage between public school and private school. The difference is, in public school, you own everything. In private school, you don't own anything, but you control it. What do you control? The outcomes. The same outcomes people are seeking on the public side. What is that? To protect, to preserve, and to grow capital. And pass it along to whomever or whatever they want in the proper position. I have a trust versus I'm a trustee. I have a trust means where you're going through a divorce, like we see some celebrities going through right now. They have a trust. But are they the trustee? The position is changed once you say you have it. Because who is the trustee? If you have a trust, then who is the trustee? Well, I'm the trustee. So that means you own the trust. No. Or do you? So we get so many people that come and say, well, we're going to control our birth name because it's a trust. It's the Sesticate Trust. It's the government trust. They set up a trust. The Social Security Administration is a trust. So where our name, our government name is a trust. Okay, so what is it then? Do you have a trust or are you the trustee? Hold on. What do you mean it's my name? Right? Did you forget that a name can be a trust, can be a corporation? Because that's what it is when you look it up in the Black's Law Dictionary. The same dictionary that the lawyer knows the definition of it, which is a name. But if you're a trustee, you know that it's a trust. You know that it's a corporation. Why? Because a name is that. It's an artificial person. That's why they call it a legal person. So why ever go into the public and say, in the public they saying, well, I'm not the artificial thing. I'm not the trust. We know that. But what are you? It's I am a trustee. But when you're trying to reclaim these benefits because people feel like they're entitled to something because they're in control of their name now, which is an entity, what happens? But they have it. Do you have it in your control or do you just arbitrarily have it? And people have it. I have my name. I have a lien on my name. Here we go. I have a lien on my name. So you have a lien on the so-called government name, the so-called trust that the Social Security Administration is utilizing. Okay. So you have it. And what position is when you have it? Not just ownership, but beneficiary status. Why? Because you're getting something. You're receiving something. Have implies that there's something coming to you. Because you have it. Isn't that what beneficiaries say? I have a beneficial interest in the trust. That's it. Does the trustee have anything in the trust? No, because they don't own it. That's on the public side. That's on the private side. But people think it's okay to keep saying I have it. But they say they're going private. They say they are private. They say they're in trustee training. But they haven't stopped this one habit. And the one habit is costly because you never know who you're talking to. Because you have to remember that you are the trustee. And by not remembering that, you could be sitting in front of a banker. You could be sitting in front of some type of authority. In general, we're not saying over the trust or you, but authority. You all know those different type of three-letter names or whatever names, acronyms, whatever. And when you talk like that, they may assume by your acquiescence or lack of specificity in your position. The position is what? Trusteeship. Right. So why are we ever talking about having one? But this is coming from the public side because the public lawyers will say, the attorneys, when we talk to them, what will they say? Oh, well, you want to make sure that you maintain control. So what are they saying? They're really saying you want to make sure that you never give up ownership. You want to make sure that you can always take it back out of the trust. Isn't that what they say? You're not gonna own the assets anymore. That's irrevocable if you do it that way. And every time I had something in my name, what happened? That incurred a liability. Somebody can sue you out of the asset. Why? Because it's in the name. Because you have something in your possession and it's not protected in the proper position. It's just that simple. This is an easy lesson, ladies and gentlemen, for trustees and anyone else that's looking to manage something. It's all about own nothing, control everything. This is about language. Getting a Black's Law dictionary. Being able to be abreast of how to operate in the proper capacity to move forward with your life and not feel that you're down. Don't ever feel that you're out. See, we already know the trustee has a position of power. Why? Because if you don't own it, ladies and gentlemen, do corporations go bankrupt? Why wouldn't a trust go bankrupt? Oh no, what do you mean it can go bankrupt? Ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot of things that can go bankrupt, specifically entities, artificial persons. Why do you think they have these things in place? Because in order for you not to be looked at as a somebody's just a bad financial, what is that? A financial fiduciary, then you don't have it in your name. Period. Proper fiduciaryship of the books of the company says you don't own it. But when you have one, what position are you in? You're not just a fiduciary. Fiduciaries can be the secretary or treasurer of the company / trustee, or trustee can have those positions. So let's look at this from a range of I have versus I am a trustee, because there's a big difference. And we've explained this for years. People have come on chats. They've come in and tried to ask us many questions about this subject matter. But this is the difference between you sitting in front of a banker and them literally thinking that you own the trust. Why? Because you haven't made it clear when you are talking to them that you are what? I'm just a trustee. And you can see that on the public side. The public side explains that clearly. When you see trustees moving out of positions at colleges have trustees, they have a board of trustees. You see that they are people that they move around. People don't hold these positions forever. Sometimes they have successors or they move around. It's just bottom line. A trustee is a servant, someone that's being a steward for a period of time. They're serving their time, they're serving their duty. Because it's just a duty, it's a position of duty and responsibility. Not ownership, just control over what will be considered an asset. So many people say, well, do you need a trust if you don't have assets? Well, what is a trust to do? Hold property. Property would be an asset. Once again, this is a vocabulary lesson. This is a lesson in knowing the words. And speech is everything. Bottom line, period. Those slight twinges in the speech convey a message. This is cause and effect. If you say you have one, you're going to cause a different effect than if I am a trustee. These are laws. These are laws, ladies and gentlemen, that we're talking about. That if you break these laws, do you see how the position gets compromised? Because the proper speech, which deals with cause and effect, isn't stated. This is a very, very important thought process that when we see the Moorish brothers and sisters and so many people that come from these different communities and they say, they just keep saying, I have one. They say, I have one. And they just keep saying it. And we're like, well, at what point are you just going to be a trustee over the family estate? That's what it's all about. It's a pure blank slate of own nothing, control everything. We encourage you all to go back and listen to previous episodes uh, as well because it's going to prepare you for trustee training. Ladies and gentlemen, there's already 50 hours of content on the YouTube. That's enough to bring a person in the fold where trustee training there may be a breeze for them. But in the meantime, between time, there's so much more value in the episodes because these are the questions that we get in the private. These are the statements that people make in the private. This is the distinction between public and private. Here we go. They got people on the internet. I'm going to sell you a trust. Isn't that what they say? And when they sell it to you, that's what you become. The person that owns it. Because you bought it. But what happens when you just are asked to be a trustee? Well, how does that work? That's what trustee training prepares people for. That's what it prepares them for. This was a very simple conversation. Didn't want to make it too long, but it's something we definitely wanted to get out there. We have tons of episodes. We're going to just keep rattling off because these are questions we get into private. And to address it, it's really simple. If you have a trust, it's public. Every time you say it, just know you're in the public. When you're a trustee, you're private. Why? Because you don't own it. Now you're focused on protecting, preserving, growing assets. Period. It's that simple, ladies and gentlemen. Can there be multiple trustees? Sure. They're still all trustees of the family estate. Why isn't family estate taught? Because this is the difference between the 1% and the 99. See, the 99 has no interest in learning how to be a trustee and be responsible. And just be a trustee. They want everybody's opinion, even a state-created lawyer. Because they're only in that state practicing unless they go past the bar to another state. So here we are. They say, okay, you have a trust now. What do? We did that episode. But you have a trust. What happened to just being a trustee? Over the family estate. That means you have something to protect. $1 to whatever high number. This is 1% thought process versus 99% thought process, where 99% thought process, I have a company, I have a car, I have a cell phone, I have a house, I have a mortgage. I have children. Really? Hold on, children are a business? Yeah, they are. We can do that episode too. Why? Because how can an artificial entity called the government take away a natural being's responsible situation? Well, when you become a minor, when you look at that in law, that means you're not a good financial fiduciary. You haven't learned fiduciaryship. You haven't learned trusteeship over your family estate. Your children are your family estate. Your parents are your family estate. Everybody that's involved in the family estate is a part of the family estate. But you have a trust. What happened to just being a trustee in the family estate? That's the difference between 99% thought process and 1% thought process. 1% thought process says, we're just trustees of the family estate. That's it, bottom line. Well, where do you start, Trust Christian? You start by being a trustee first. Not trying to have a trust. Because that implies ownership. That implies that you have it in your possession. and you're claiming that an artificial entity is yours. Claiming. Well, what are you claiming as a trustee? Trusteeship, stewardship, fiduciaryship. See how the difference between 1% focus as opposed to 99% focus? Having everything and having nothing. No security, no protection. There's no real growth going on because they ignore the taxes that are associated with that. They ignore the liabilities that are associated with that. What about the preservation of it? Ladies and gentlemen, if you're going to be a proper fiduciary, you already know there's a thing called inflation. Isn't the money losing value? But what happened in the public? Did they tell you to insure your money? Did they tell you to insure the money? Did they tell you to insure the greatest asset in the company if you're the worker? Did they tell you about key man insurance? How many mothers and fathers are working and don't have key man insurance? You're working the business. You've been working it for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, and you still don't have key man insurance. The company doesn't have key man insurance to ensure the fact that the family won't be wiped out after the person of whether it's the CEO, because that could be you. You could be the primary member or manager of the company. But what happened to something so simple as, guess what? My kids, they can take over this entity. Why? Because Keyman fills it right back up what will be a potential salary that you were already taking. And make sure that the company can stand up while the next successor or the next manager or the next trustee comes in and actually has some capital to work with from the beginning. Oh no, I thought I had to have the regular man insurance. Insurance is expensive. But what happened to it being a business expense for, hey, here we go, look. Not only did you protect the company now, why? Because there's an insurance policy on you from the company. Then we also did what? As a trustee or as a manager, you're preserving the company. How are you preserving the company? Because as soon as you pass or a key person in the company passes, the money that was made is preserved and put right back in the company through the death policy. Okay, what about the growth? Okay, now you have capital to work with for the next generation or the next individual that's going to fill in. How do you preserve it? You never actually gave it directly to the person that was there to grow the asset. You didn't give it directly to them. So when you hear Warren Buffett or Bill Gates or you hear anybody of wealth say we're not going to give wealth directly to our kids, do you see how it was just done in one element? It's business, not personal. So you pass it along in a business position, not a personal position. But if you have a trust, do you have a policy on the trust or does the trust have a policy on you? Because then the trust will have a policy on you. See how the trust has one on you? But then if you have a trust, that means you have an insurance policy on the trust? How does that work? You have an insurance policy on the trust. Okay. But the trust is artificial person. Right. They put insurance on living beings. Trust can have it, but then remember, if you put it on there, what happened? You're the owner. Well, it can be a beneficiary of the policy. Who would that be? Can you be the beneficiary of your own policy? That defeats the purpose of having insurance. So there's a proper way to do things and there's a improper way to do things. We just shared with you all the proper way. The 1% versus the 99%. This is basic information. We're not doing coding. This isn't rocket science. It's a change in thought process though, because you've been programmed. We've been programmed. You think you can't be programmed to be in poverty? Think about what the public school system produces. It doesn't produce 100% success rate. Now think about this. You say, well, what about the private trust, Christian? What are we going to don't give us that. The public may not produce 100% success rate, but what about the private? Ladies and gentlemen, if you're in a private position, You're in the correct position. Of course you won't fail. But you didn't want to hear that because the public side says there's a 50% chance you'll win and a 50% chance you'll pass it on. Why? Because most people in the public, they don't have anything in place. All they're going to do is give it straight to their children. They're going to give it straight to their heirs. They're going to give it in an improper position where you don't see their name from one generation to the next because they didn't set up an endowment with their local hospital, with their local college, with their local library. They didn't do it even in a proper position. That's because they had the money. They didn't just become a steward. You're supposed to be a steward, a trustee, a manager of assets. And that in turns us to be educated to the highest degree. Fiduciaryship. That's what trustee training is. Fiduciaryship. It's stewardship. Ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate you all for tuning in live or listening to replay. There's a difference in small bits of your language. And if these things are not changed or corrected or improved, this is how they weed out the 99 from the 1%. When you speak a certain way, the 1% knows the buzzwords. And when you don't speak a certain way, it's always recognized as well. Ladies and gentlemen, don't think that trustees aren't listening. They're always listening because they're students. Well, who? Every trustee. The ones that are actually doing the 4 keys to wealth. That's who knows trusteeship. Everyone else is trying it. They're trying it. They're giving a run for it. How serious do you take your family estate? How serious do you take it? Because we can tell you already now, our grandmother, Trust Christian's grandmother, she didn't care. She said, I'm not leaving you anything. And no, it wasn't going to be passed through a charity. No, it wasn't going to be passed through a trust. Why? Because she's a part of the 99%. She didn't even have a trust. So how can we be the trustee and assume trusteeship over assets for the family when they didn't even set us up in a proper position? This is the harsh reality of people's families, and you may have to pick up the torch. You might even have to lay what we call the private family foundation. Why? Because it's about trusteeship, not having a trust. So many people want to have a trust. What happened to just being a trustee? That's what trustees are here for. They're sick and tired of not knowing the truth. The truth is, your life is free when you own nothing, control everything. You walk down the street laughing and smiling, you feel good. Why? Because no one can take anything from you. Ever. Ever. But how many of you all will sit at the other end of this line and allow somebody to compromise your family position? This lets us know at the vault how serious the 99% is. The ones that invest in their education, they're not just emailing the vault and saying, hey, vault, can we get in trustee training? How much is the cost? You see it in the email. And you're still counting pennies. Ladies and gentlemen, on the private family foundation side, less than 3% have more than $1 million in trust in the private family foundation sector. Less than 3% have $1 million. So that lets you know people that have you even think are laying the proper private family foundation, they still didn't grow the assets to even $1 million. What happened? Because they didn't learn trusteeship. They were in trust. They were in the private family foundation, but they didn't learn trusteeship. They learn how to own assets arbitrarily. They think through an alter ego. They think it's theirs. Some people say, treat it like it's yours. That's not a good thing. Why? You don't need to. In trusteeship, you follow the contract. The contract tells you everything to do. Ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate you all for tuning in live or listening to replay. Trustee training is going on right now. We're excited for the marketplace. We appreciate you all making sure that you're taking care of your family estate, because that's what it's all about. Bottom line is people contact the vault and they look at a 3-digit number and say, wow, that's how much my family estate's worth. Why? We're not talking 99% information over here. We have no interest in it. Why? That's going to lead you back into slavery. We might as well tell you to go get a job. In trusteeship, you don't even have a job. You're a trustee. There's a difference between being a trustee and having a job. You don't work for the trust. You're a trustee. Oh, people didn't know that. What do you mean I don't work for a trust? I'm a trustee. Go look at the position and the title. Fiduciary. Anybody can fill that position. More than one person can fill that position. How many CEOs do they have of companies on the public side? How many CFOs do they have on the public side in the company? How many CMOs do they have on the public side? Usually one. But see, when you learn 1% trusteeship, you learn, oh, okay, well, multiple trustees can sit on the board. Why? Because it's an artificial entity. That's the difference, ladies and gentlemen. 1% versus the 99. Investing in your private education. The private education is trusteeship. Bottom line, period. Having a trust, people say, can we read a book? Can you just recommend a book so we can get it all on the public side? We're not ready for trustee training yet. Can we get a book? What book? Trusteeship is a lifestyle. There is no book. Trustees that come in trustee training, do they get supplemental reading? I have a trust says you're not willing to read a book. Why? Because I have a trust means you didn't give up ownership. Trusteeship says, okay, I have to learn a different thought process, a different way of moving now, a paradigm shift. I don't own anything. So how am I able to, some people would say benefit, some people would say be in a position of power, but we'll leave it as a position of control because you gave up ownership. That's such a critical, sensitive thing for everybody because they want to own their house. Think about how you've been programmed to own a house. Wow. That's called 99% information. I have a car, I have a house. That's 99%. We're talking 1%. We're talking private. We're talking trusteeship. That's what we talk over here. That's what we talk about every Sunday with trustees. Super Bowl Sunday, Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve. We are trustees. We have an obligation to the family. Trust. You don't have an obligation to your family trust right now, do you? Ladies and gentlemen, why can't all of our family members be on the board of trustees and no one can take money out of our family insurance policy unless we all agree on it? What happens when someone wants to purchase something? The insurance policy could have paid for it, but we could have voted on it. What happens to all these families that are putting their money into these children's college funds? What do you think these insurance policies are? They're trust. They're contracts. And what happened? People gave away the responsibility of trusteeship. Why? Because they have an insurance policy for their family. Listen, have. They have an insurance policy on themselves. They have. But what about just being a trustee? They say group economics. How? Then you can't have a trust as a group economic. Why? Because it's not yours. It's the group's. But it's not the group's. It's the family trust. It's family trust. Family. That's how the family's moving now. No one owns it. That's the difference, ladies and gentlemen, between 1% and 99%. And people think it's so fancy and glory. This is the separator. Why? Because you don't need to be a rocket scientist for this. You don't need to be smart for this.
This is why people in this environment are not highly educated. They're educated on fiduciaryship. They are focused on being an excellent money manager. Hold on, but I was supposed to work a job and I was supposed to start a business. For all the ones that want to start a business, you're really starting a fiduciary relationship with an entity. Well, hold on. Can you have more than one entity as a trustee? Well, if you have one, or can you have more than one as an entrepreneur owner? You can have one and that incurs liability. But you can be a trustee of multiple things. Yes. You can be a manager of multiple entities. Yes. So you're focused on a fiduciary relationship. It's business, not personal. Always has been, always will be. That's the difference, ladies and gentlemen. Versus I have a trust versus I am a trustee. We don't need anything but control. Why? Because you truly are in control. And as a controller of a company, you have a responsibility. It's already written in the contract. Bottom line, period. You don't have to have one. You just got to be the manager or the trustee of it. We appreciate you all for tuning in or listening to the replay. It's been a beautiful episode. Feel free to reach out, Christian at Trust Christian, if you all would like to just get questions answered more on this stuff. We're not pushing, consultation. Some people email the vault and they expect all these answers back. What are you expecting answers for? The simple answer is you either want the consultation or you keep listening to the free information. The vault doesn't need to solicit. This is 1%. We don't need the 99. The 99 wants 1%. And we're here to make sure that trusteeship is a basic contract knowledge. We share with you all. Get your Black's Law Dictionary. When you enroll in trustee training, you learn more aspects of the private sector. But we've had people we've had people contact the vault for consultation this past week. They don't even have a business started yet. The actual LLC or the C Corp. That's where you can start. And the vault for years literally sat on the phone, even this past week, yesterday, with someone that says, we made over $10,000 and they didn't even have a LLC or a C Corp. And they made that in less than a couple months. Because they weren't in the proper position, because they didn't have the education. See, you're in the information age, so you have to invest in your education. It's not going to be free. Everything that's free isn't good. That's why we don't need to solicit. Because people think the free stuff is to get you to pay. No, that's not the case. This is to say, hey, look, we could come on here and just share with you all how we talk in the private. Because this is how we talk in the private. It's not about ownership. It's about control. See, we know the difference. You don't just say, oh, that's a trust fund, baby. You say, I'm going to make sure that my child is not called that. They're not. We're called what? Trustees. Because if they're the beneficiary, they're going to get liable for something. Don't you receive something directly as the beneficiary when you receive something? Yes. That's what trustee training prepares people for. It's the mindset shift. And this isn't the only trustee program out there. It's just one of the more moderately priced ones where there's so many more people. When you get into 1%, clearly it's just that. 1%. You have to make a certain amount of money to know information. Oh, you didn't know that? You don't think that as a fiduciary, if you don't get past a certain financial threshold, that you can get financial information? Ladies and gentlemen, that is like not knowing that there's a difference between public and private. Of course there's a difference in the education based off of how much capital you've collected or grown throughout your fiduciaryship in your lifetime. Of course there is. The access to information becomes greater the more money you make. But how many people say, oh man, I'm not trying to make any more money because I'm getting killed in taxes? Well, if you address the tax liability as a trustee, then you can see how you'll be in a position where you're not afraid to generate billions of dollars or be like people that are going through divorces in the public. And guess what? If they're in the proper position, they just move on. Assets are separated easily and effortlessly. It's clearly already stated. Why? Because there's a prenuptial, there's a contract in place. Just like there's a marriage contract, guess what? Marriage is a contract, so that almost means it's a trust. Right, but who set up that contract? The public or the private? Did you have one privately before the public, or did you even create a private one after the public? Display of contract between two parties? Oh, it gets deep. Trusteeship is in a marriage. It's not just in a family trust. See how simple this education is? Because it's a contract education. Would you would you benefit? Appreciate you all for tuning in live or listening to replay. We actually know so said no sound. We're back. We sure you hear it now. Everybody there, right? But if somebody could type into the chat where we were, we'll go back and edit it and cut this part out where it got dead for a second, and then we'll start back where it was. So if someone wanted to type in the chat where we were, we'll pick up right where it was and edit it. But other than that, that's the difference between public and private. Can you all still hear? Are we there? Okay, no one else has said anything, so we're assuming that they cannot still hear. We appreciate you all for tuning in live. Okay, finest someone typed into the chat. So once again, if someone remembers the point where it blacked out, you all are listening live. Feel free to go back and kind of highlight that point and wrap it up really strong. But nevertheless, ladies and gentlemen, appreciate everybody for tuning in live. There's so many names in there, and we are not butchering people's names. We are against butchering people's names. You all know that you're live. You know that you typed in the chat. It's better to type into the chat what city you're from. And we always love seeing where the audience is. Everybody can see where the audience is. But typing in the city that you're from is always going to be easier than typing in your name, obviously, because people even have different names for their chat name and things like that. And there's no need to butcher them. But we always appreciate all the cities that type in. Atlanta. Appreciate Atlanta for tuning in live, listening into the replay. Always have a bunch of people up in Atlanta that are tuning in. But we appreciate people. Allentown, PA. Is it warm in Allentown, PA up there right now? It's supposed to be summertime. Is it hot up there? But definitely, when it comes to being a trustee, ladies and gentlemen, there's a big difference. And This education is made for people that want to be in that position. Some people say, which comes first, trusteeship or they say trusteeship or manager as a corporation of a corporation. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're in the public, make sure your public affairs are together. You think you're not going to have to get your public credit together? Why let your public credit look like you're a bad fiduciary? The only reason your credit's bad is because you haven't showed that you're a good fiduciary. Bottom line, period. So, of course, there's going to have to be some type of public assembly, specifically in the public because they're dealing with credit and debit. People say, can they go bankrupt though? Yes. And what about the private? Yes. But it's not likely because it shows bad fiduciaryship. And sometimes it doesn't look that way, even the trustees that know. Bankruptcy, how could that be bad when they have multiple bankruptcies? And you can see even the United States is operating in bankruptcy right now. They're operating with trillions and trillions of debt on the books. Why? Because they're in receivership. Is your life in receivership? If you're a citizen of the States, don't you have a debt on your back? You can go to, what is that, U.S. debt clock? That's because you have money. That's because you have everything. They're banking on people having things. But what are the politicians telling you? Hey, we're just trustees. We're servants. We're supposed to be servants. We're supposed to be serving the public. They're just your public servants. See how they tell you? But guess what? Are they collecting checks in front of your face? Lifetime pensions for serving you. And may not be in your best interest. Maybe didn't serve you at all during their term. But they sure got out of the office with a lifetime pension. That's the difference between having a trust, because you're the beneficiary of the Social Security Administration Trust. Oh, yeah, let's get our Social Security benefits because we have money in the system already, right? Because why would you be receiving something if you didn't already give it? And then when you gave it, that means you had it, right? And you gave it away, right? But did you give it away irrevocably? Oh, no. Let's keep going in the public now. You didn't give it away irrevocably. But then they gave it back to you as a what? Isn't it called Social Security tax? Oh, no, we didn't hear that part. We kept glossing over the words because we had the public school education. So we're getting the benefits from a tax. Oh, okay. What happened to you just being a trustee? That's the difference, ladies and gentlemen. Own nothing, control everything. Christian that trusts Christian. Enjoy the rest of your day.